On the 28th of February in the year 2026, the United States and Israel launched aerial strikes targeting senior leaders and sensitive sites within Iran. In response, Iran retaliated just 2 hours later with a barrage of missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles aimed at Israel and American bases in the Gulf states, including Bahrain, headquarters of the Fifth Fleet, as well as Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. This, of course, calls to mind what transpired on the 13th of June in the year 2025, what came to be known as the 12-Day War, when Israel carried out attacks against Iranian targets and the Iranian response proved unexpected. Iran rained missiles upon Tel Aviv in an unprecedented scene that many believed would not be repeated, at least not in the immediate future. Yet it is unfolding once again after only a few months, bringing back to the forefront a question that resurfaces with every major crisis since the end of the Cold War. Are we witnessing a new phase in the reconfiguration of the international order? Or are we confronting a stage in which the balance of power across the world is being rearranged? Or do these developments sketch the contours of a worst-case scenario, serving merely as a prelude to a third world war? To comprehend the present landscape, it must be read as an unprecedented entanglement of military, political, economic, and technological conflicts simultaneously. Confrontations are no longer confined to conventional fronts between regular armies. Rather, they now extend into cyberspace, global supply chains, energy markets, and even digital infrastructure. Limited strikes, targeted assassinations, international sanctions, and shadow wars waged through regional proxies. All these elements suggest that the conflict has transcended a local or regional framework and has become part of a broader struggle over influence and the redistribution of centers of power. However, characterizing any escalation as a world war necessitates a measure of careful inquiry and rigorous reflection. Historically, world wars have been characterized by the direct and simultaneous engagement of great powers in military confrontations spanning multiple continents. Today, despite the gravity of ongoing developments, the balance of deterrence, particularly nuclear deterrence, continues to function as a restraining force, preventing a comprehensive confrontation among major powers. Yet this very deterrence could itself become a catalyst should miscalculations accumulate or the of hostilities expand, rendering the outbreak of a third world war a tangible and formidable possibility. The present tension cannot be understood in isolation from deeper transformations within the structure of the international system. Since the decline of the unipolar order that crystallized after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the world has been moving toward a turbulent multipolarity in which major powers compete over spheres of influence, trade corridors, and technological supremacy. Undoubtedly, the Middle East constitutes a strategic crossroads, not merely because of its internal conflicts, but due to its integral connection to global energy security, maritime routes, and geopolitical connectivity projects linking Asia and Europe. Accordingly, the question is not solely whether the Third World War has begun, but also what form such a war would assume in the 21st century. Would it manifest as a large-scale conventional military confrontation, or would it take the shape of a prolonged hybrid war in which limited military operations intertwine with sustained economic, cyber, and information warfare? More importantly, what would be its impact on the Middle East? It is therefore necessary to deconstruct the roots of the current conflict, analyze its potential trajectories, and anticipate the configuration of alliances that might crystallize should the scope of confrontation widen, ultimately arriving at a realistic appraisal of possible escalation scenarios and their global repercussions. To understand how the elements of confrontation accumulated over decades to culminate in the present moment, one must begin with the historical foundations of the fraught relationship between Iran and the United States, a relationship that traces back to 1953. In that year, Washington and London supported a military coup that overthrew Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh following his decision to nationalize the oil industry. The coup reinstated the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and entrenched, among broad segments of Iranian society, the conviction that the United States was directly intervening in their political and economic sovereignty. With the advent of the Islamic Revolution in 1979 under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini, tensions escalated into a complete rupture, particularly in the aftermath of the American hostage crisis at the United States Embassy in Tehran. From that moment onward, the two parties enter a state of institutionalized hostility, marked by escalating economic sanctions and indirect confrontations. Moreover, the political and intelligence support extended by the United States to Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s further deepened the Iranian perception of an open-ended confrontation with Washington. In the decades that followed, the conflict assumed an indirect character across several, including Iran's nuclear program, Tehran's support for regional allies in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, as well as the extensive American military presence in the Gulf. In 2015, the nuclear agreement represented a significant milestone, seeking to regulate Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the gradual lifting of sanctions. However, the withdrawal of the American administration from the agreement in 2018 returned escalation to the forefront, followed by a policy of maximum pressure aimed at suffocating the Iranian economy. In response, Iran expanded the scope of its regional maneuvering and increased its level of uranium enrichment. Thus, the present escalation cannot be regarded as an abrupt development. Rather, it is the cumulative outcome of decades of mistrust, reciprocal accusations, and competition for regional influence. This background is essential to understanding why every limited confrontation today carries the latent potential for broader escalation that could transcend the regional framework, should the calculations of major powers intersect. As for Israel's position within the equation of conflict, it constitutes a foundational pillar. Israel has consistently regarded Iran as the foremost strategic threat to its national security, particularly in light of Iranian political rhetoric supporting factions hostile to it, alongside the expansion of Iran's missile and nuclear capabilities. From the Israeli perspective, the danger is not confined to the possibility of Tehran acquiring a nuclear weapon that might erode its strategic superiority. It extends to the network of alliances Iran has cultivated in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, alliances that collectively form a multi-front pressure encirclement. Accordingly, Israel has adopted a strategy predicated upon conducting limited and precise strikes designed to weaken its adversary and prevent the accumulation of its capabilities without descending into a comprehensive war. This approach has been manifested in operations targeting military facilities, Syria, cyber operations, and high-level assassinations of figures associated with Iran's nuclear and missile programs. At the same time, Israel relies upon its conventional military superiority, its policy of strategic nuclear ambiguity, and its close alliance with the United States. This combination provides it with a preemptive impetus, yet it simultaneously carries the of escalation, as any miscalculation in assessing the Iranian response could open a multi-front theater encompassing Lebanon or Gaza, and potentially even the Gulf states. Moreover, the involvement of Egypt in the conflict could open the gates of catastrophe for the Zionists, placing Israel in direct confrontation with the most powerful army in the Arab world and North Africa, according to the global ranking of global firepower. Israel's entanglement in this conflict is not confined to the military dimension. It is intrinsically connected to the redrawing of regional alliances. The rapprochement with certain Arab states in recent years has reshaped the strategic environment and rendered confrontation with Iran part of a broader equation in which considerations of security, energy, and maritime corridors intersect. Thus, Israel represents a pivotal element in any prospective escalation scenarios. It is not a secondary actor, but a proactive force seeking to prevent its adversary from reaching a new deterrent equilibrium that could constrain its freedom of action. The question, therefore, remains, Will the strategy of limited strikes enable Israel to attain its objectives? Or might it instead ignite a broader confrontation that transcends conventional calculations and culminates in a third nuclear world war that leaves nothing in its wake? We shall endeavor, God willing, to probe more deeply into the contours of the American-Israeli alliance, ultimately arriving at the flashpoints that could compel major powers to engage in a conflict that might set humanity back 1,000 years.